One of the principal reasons that misandry is so prevalent is that men are their own worst enemy. Men are too quick to believe the worst of other men, and this is strongly encouraged by society. In this way, men attack themselves, never realising that they're doing the devil's work for her.
It's not an accident, is it?
Nah, suicide. I wonder who he was.
Barry Sipes. Paedophile. He radioed in the licence number.
Pedo?
Technically.
How do you know?
Same way everybody else does. Not really. They didn't print the full story. In 1984, he had consensual sex with a 15-and-a-half-year-old. He was 18. Nowadays, you wouldn't blink.
And why did he...
Must have known everybody had jumped to the same conclusion as you.
Good work, Andy. Very neat.
Men cannot be defeated by any kind of direct attack, but getting men to turn on each other is a successful method to enable their oppression. Men are expected to behave in very specific ways in order to be accepted as manly.
Deal with it. Be a man.
Be a man.
Mr. Thornton, go down this instant and face him like a man.
Show your daughter you can be a man and do something right for a change.
Stop crying. You just became a man, now act like one.
Women have no expectations or requirements to be accepted as womanly, but I think that they should. Men can't get in touch with their feminine side because men don't have one. Men's caring, gentle and nurturing side is their caring, gentle and nurturing side. It's only the arrogance of women that claims those attributes as feminine. Men can't so much as accidentally touch each other without fear of being labelled gay.
You could maybe be my second at on the road.
What do you mean? You want me to drive with you or what?
No.
Oh. Hey.
Well, listen, I'll pick you up at 3, huh?
Yeah.
Like in India, grown-ass men hold hands with other men and walk down the street like everything's okay. And to them, there's nothing gay about it. Here's the thing. There's nothing gay to them. To them, I'm holding my friend's hand. What's gay about that? See, you grow up over here, there is no acceptable time for two straight men to ever touch hands. Ever. You ever walk to the mall with one of your guy friends and your hand accidentally bumps it? You're like, hey, what the fuck is wrong with him? Get off me!
This doesn't come from within men, and no other animal behaves like this. It comes from a society that forces men away from each other using homophobia, and forces a dependency on women for validation of manhood. That's why it's hard for many men to simply answer no when asked if he's going out with a woman. There's pressure from our society to explain himself. He'll tend to say, not at the moment, or I'm between women. If he just says no, he might be considered gay.
I love Brad Pitt.
Me too, but in a totally non-gay way.
No, I mean, we bust your balls about being gay because you hang out with a lot of fags and you work out with them and you go dancing and, quite frankly, look at your shirt.
I mean, I don't believe this. You are going to turn down a pussy like this? Staring you smack in your face? No man can turn down this pussy.
You stop saying it.
What's the matter with you? You don't like women?
It's wrong, and ironically, highly emasculating to define manhood in relation to women. Women seem to understand this about their sexuality, but men are yet to explore this to the same extent.
And also, you can remember that no man, not Derek, not Mark, defines who you are.
For example, with impotence, this is only ever portrayed as a problem for men in relation to women, instead of an issue related to himself.
Karen and I had are having a few problems in bed.
Really? What kind of problems?
I don't seem to be able to satisfy her. I can't perform.
What? Really? You're impotent?
Manhood has nothing to do with women, and doesn't need the approval of women, nor any reference to women.
The reason we're getting very messed up nowadays in terms of gender identity and where we're going, and especially men find it very difficult to know what a man is or what a man should do, is because in letting go of the roles that define our jobs, we've also let go of the roles that define our identity. And if you don't have anything to define your identity, you're going to be lost. That's the basic truth of the matter. So what do you attach your identity to? Usually it's your job. And it kind of goes around, it's a feedback loop. It's your job that defines your identity, which defines what job you get. But that's all up in the air now. We can do whatever job we want. If you want to be a nurse, you can be a nurse. So where do you attach your identity to? Where do you get your identity from? Where does a man get his identity from? My thinking here is that we have to reinvent roles for ourselves. We can't do without roles, because that's what shapes us. We need to know who we are and what we are. So we need to redefine what it means to be a man as distinct from what it means to be a woman. I don't like the term new man, because new man just seems to be defined by what women want in men. And what women say they want in men is very different from what they find attractive in men. So you can't cater your identity to what the opposite gender wants. That's absurd. You've got to find what makes you happy, what gives you strength, completely independent from the opposite sex. In the same way that women have defined what they want and who they are, completely distinct from what men have wanted them to be. And we need to now redefine roles that define what it means to be a man. And that's what we're working on. That's what we're working on here. That's an ongoing struggle for me.
Men on the whole feel unhappy unless they have a female partner. I don't believe the same is true with women. Women, yes, like to have a male partner, but by and large they get on very well together. They tend to, their friendships, it seems to be the case that female friendships cater for their emotional needs. Male friendships tend not to touch the emotional needs. Men tend to be involved in, when they're talking, when they're interacting, with something that is outside of themselves, like a game of football, darts, whatever. It isn't the same with women. Women are not as dependent on men emotionally as vice versa, is my belief.
Men are very fearful of women, even in relationships. Men are far more dependent on women, believe it or not, than women are on men. Possibly because a small boy is at his mother's mercy for very many years of his life.
Who do you think is emotionally stronger?
Women are definitely emotionally stronger. There's even been studies, digital psychology, showing that after a breakup, well, they study divorces, but let's say a breakup, that women get over it on average in a matter of months, about 3 months. Men take about 3 years.
2 to 3 hours.
No,
it looks like that.
Again, I'm coming from experience, and it would seem as though women would get over it.
They get over it a lot faster than men do, which is a total lie. The whole lie to the idea that men are kind of completely insensitive and we don't care.
Stone cold, Steve Austin type.
We're not. Absolutely, we have feelings. Do you know what I mean?
In fact, it's the opposite. Women are the stone cold ones.
So why is it we think that women are so sensitive and vulnerable emotionally, and it's actually
because they're mothers. They're our mothers. We're not talking about women. We're talking about our mothers. That's what we do when we talk kind of all this stuff about kind of the sensitivity of women and the goodness and the innocence. We're talking about our mums. We're plainly not talking about our girlfriends.
What do you mean by we're talking about our mums?
We're talking about our experience of women from the experience of our mothers. So
we're not looking
in
at
terms of caring, in terms of we're looking at it from the point of view of a little child being cared for by this perfect mother, and that's our idea of women. That's when we talk about women. That's what we talk about.
Well, I don't.
But then you go beyond that, and you go beyond that, and you start talking about the women in terms of the women that we've known, and they turn out to be stone cold, over in and out. Jesus.
So how come your mother's the complete opposite to that then?
I don't know, because you are a son.
So basically, you feel you owe them your life, and so that's it. You pretty much. There's nothing they can do wrong.
Well, they're the ones caring for you, and you're only a child at that point.
I think my mother's the only woman that hasn't hurt me, actually. Well, she'd physically beat me, but, you know, that's...
Yeah, well, same here.
Yeah, but that's okay.
That's cultural.
Men are conditioned to rely on women for emotional support and intimacy, and that to seek it from other men, or offer it, shows weakness.
Wear a mask and not talk about the feelings, particular men. It's not a very macho thing to talk about their feelings, as you know, they don't want to be classed as a wimp, or if they go down the pub, it's football and cars, but they don't generally go and talk about how they're feeling to their mates.
Sex is often presented as if a woman is doing a man a favour by doing it with him, and he should be grateful for her kindness.
I know you did it because you thought I was a dead man. So don't beat yourself up.
Thank you.
What for?
For this wonderful gift.
Women typically don't like it if men are too close to other men.
One of the biggest differences between men and women, men are actually happy when women go out with their girlfriends and have a good time. When you go out with your girlfriends and have a good time, we're fucking happy for you. You come home and go, me and my girlfriends are gonna go see Sex in the City. We're like, great! Now I don't have to take her to see that shit. But it don't work the other way around. Women never want us to have a good time. Ever, 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 ever. Fellas, if your woman come home from work and you got a smile on your face that she didn't put there, she gets suspicious. The fuck you smiling about? I ain't fucking in 3 weeks. What the fuck you smiling about?
Women also don't like male-only clubs and societies, and have successfully invaded all areas of life where men might go to be away from women.
For Mr. John Steed, I'm Dr. Peel.
I'm afraid that's impossible. You are female.
As you see.
Then you can't come in. No women, not in Boodles, not since 1762.
Really? Please, don't get up.
Congratulations, you've entered a bastion of male privilege.
Women see such things as a threat to their power over men. Men are simply not allowed to exclude women. In contrast, women demand their women-only swim sessions and women-only gyms. You should ask yourself why. Why would women seek to take legal action to gain entry to a male-only club? Why do they care? The answer to that question is that it's not about what women want. It's about what they don't want. Women don't want men to have any respite from female influence. Either of you believe in love at first sight?
I can't believe in it because it's never happened.
I do. I know somebody said that, and I attacked him because I found that it's not just wrong; it's damaging.
In what way?
Because you see, the whole Hollywood industry of this love at first sight and the movies and the fairy tales that you get taught, it damages you for relationships. It makes you expect far too much from a relationship. It's like the women who say, yeah, I want him to be my best friend, I want him to be my husband, I want him to be my... That's what you have friends for fuck's sake. You can't fulfill all those things with one person. And if you try to, you're going to fail, and then you're going to get all bitter and twisted, and it's all fucked up. And the whole idea of the love at first sight thing as well, that is doing a disservice to what love is about. If you're going to love at first sight, and love is a waste of time, it's bullshit. Love is bigger than having it at first sight.
And where's the idea that your partner can give you everything? Where does that come from?
I reckon it's a modern idea. A really good friend of mine, a very wise man, and I trust him deeply. He said to me, never give everything of yourself to a woman. You give everything to yourself of a woman, and imagine she walks out in the street next day, gets run over by a bus, your life's over. If that's all you're about, then your life is pretty shallow and small.
I have to disagree.
Go ahead. I'll destroy you.
I think you're right in the sense that if you do open up to a woman everything and she walks at you, then yeah, it can shake you because it's happened to me. But I would do it again if I felt I found the right person.
Okay, when I say give everything, I mean I'm not saying don't love and don't love powerfully. I'm saying there's a certain part of yourself that you keep to yourself. There's a certain part of you that is just for you. It's not for her. You're bigger than just being something for somebody else. You don't do everything just to please the other person.
Oh, no. I agree with that.
You know, her happiness is not what it's all about. That sounds harsh, but it's
I
not
just
what
want
it's
to
all
be able
about.
to...
Now you gotta start thinking about yourself.
I have no self. I don't even know who I am without Jamie.
I'm gonna puke.
When all your happiness is based on that one person.
Yeah, it can be devastating when that person walks out. Yeah, of course it can.
But that's not acceptable. All your happiness should not be based on one person. That's.
I don't think it's wrong.
Tiny.
I don't think it's wrong to do that. I think it's absolutely fine if you want to do that. If you feel that you're comfortable with this person and you trust this person and you love this person, I don't see why there's a problem.
Because I think because it's more.
Of course, it's a big risk.
Yeah, but it's more than that. It's not just about the relationship. It's about your life. It's about the fact that if your life is, it's like if your life was only about railways or your life was only about train spot in your life. It's equally geekish. It's just more acceptable for your life to be all about your partner.
The reason why I can speak, because I'm coming from this background and I feel I'm getting over it. Do you know what I mean? And I did put everything into her, without a doubt. I mean, I didn't speak to him for years because it was just about me and Michelle. And now she's not in the picture. I respect you're still there. Anyway.
So what have you actually learned from that if you do it all over again?
I've learned that women don't know what they want.
No, what have you learned?
What have I learned?
I mean, what would you do differently? Because you're saying you do it all over again. Well, for me, that's foolish. Why would you do it all over again?
Because
what have you learned?
I think you've got to be able to trust someone, and obviously it was the wrong person. But you'll never know that.
You're never really going to meet the right person.
No, you'll find someone, and you'll mould her into the right person.
Yeah, okay.
That's what you'll do.
That came out wrong when I say you want to meet the right person. What I mean is, there is nothing in life for which you can completely trust in and revolve your whole life around. There's nothing in life like that. Not just a woman, but religion, your job, anything. There's nothing in life like that.
I think I can do that in a woman. I think I can do that.
And would you get out of it then? I mean, obviously you didn't miss me or your other friends very much when you were with Michelle. So what is she giving you that we can't apart from hot sex?
It's all about the trust. It's about sharing things, you know what I mean? Anything you want to talk about.
I'm not saying don't trust her. I'm saying
don't put your all in.
I'm saying don't just abandon yourself to somebody else.
This is why pornography is so despised by so many women, and men are considered deviant for liking it.
It's no better than pornography.
And what? Pornography causes violence.
I'm not hardcore like some feminists, but there's something to it.
There's no proven correlation between looking at smut and committing crimes.
I don't care what the numbers say, it's more subtle. It objectifies women.
Was hardcore pornography responsible for the fatal addiction that motivated a notorious serial killer?
You really feel that hardcore pornography and the doorway to it, softcore pornography, is doing untold damage to other people and causing other women to be abused and killed the way you did others.
On the contrary, pornography is an extremely healthy outlet for male sexual energy. Soft pornography is not a gateway to hardcore pornography, any more than face painting is a gateway to permanent clownhood. Some people say that porn and rape are connected. Do you think that that's true?
In terms of disrespect for women, because I've been, I've heard the stuff about if you're watching porn on a regular basis, then what you're looking at is not a person or a human being. It's basically it's something for your pleasure. It's a hole and breasts, and so the way that when you go out and you're looking at women in the real world is you're putting that kind of fantasy figure on them. And I can see that, but we're adults, and when I look at porn, I know it's fantasy. I know that these women are doing it for money. I know that. I know that most of it's faked. I know that they stop every now and then to make it come across the time.
Is that it's out there. What I've found out recently is that I watch a lot of porn. Yeah, and those
how much is a lot?
Well, if you knew how much porn I had, you'd be shocked.
How much? Come on, tell me how much.
About 40 gigabytes worth.
That's only if you watch it on a computer. You won't appreciate how much porn that is.
That's awful lot of porn. But it's not because
How many hours of porn is that?
Oh, Jesus Christ. Hours and hours.
You've got your own porn stash?
Yeah,
What
but it's
kind
all
of porn have you
DVDs.
got? DVD. Do you order them just normal over
No,
the
I just
counter?
go into Soho sex shop.
You don't feel uncomfortable going in there?
No. I won't go by myself. I usually go with mates. Ray always comes down for porn shopping visits, so we'll head off.
I don't do that.
That's like organised porn.
Yeah, organised porn.
That makes it okay, doesn't it?
Okay, so what do you get out of porn that you don't get out of a woman?
Oh mate, it's just the whole glamour thing, isn't it? But there's only a certain type of porn that I'd watch. You know, it's got to be certain camera angles, certain camera shots.
Jesus, you're
I know. I have to see that the whole figures. You know, I don't like close-in shots. You know, and I don't think. Well, to me, I don't think it's related to rape at all. It does make me horny. There's no doubt about that. It does get me in the mood. But the last thing I think about is actually going out and raping a woman.
Well, so sex perverts are going to watch porn. Of course, it's not true the other way around. It doesn't mean people watch porn as sex perverts.
No, not at all.
That's all. But of course, sex perverts are going to watch porn. Just in the same way that, you know, some gun nut is going to read gun magazines. Doesn't mean gun magazines cause gun crime.
Yeah.
Well, does that mean that you treat women as sex objects? If you watch porn and then you go to work and your boss is a female, you're going to look at her as a sex object?
Well, no, because there's men in porn movies as well.
Yeah, but you don't really see them very much.
Well, that should be removed.
No, it's funny.
It's women on women. It's pureness, purity.
Do you know what? It's funny to say that because I'd prefer to watch a heterosexual porn film than a lesbian porn.
Yeah, I don't like.
Yeah, actually, so do I. You need the money shot.
Yeah.
No, girl can be nice.
That's right, you do need it.
No, girl can be nice. You get some really.
Girl is a waste of space.
No, you can get some really hot girl action.
No, you've got two hot girls and just get two guys in there with them, and I think that's better.
Yeah, well, that's what they usually do. They usually walk in halfway.
If they want to warm themselves up, I don't mind. As long as, you know, the real deal happens. And so, do you think if anyone wanted to ban porn or said that if you watch porn that means you hate women or something, what would you say about that?
I'd tell them to shut their face because it's bollocks.
Would you hit them as well?
I wouldn't hit them. No.
Actually, my girlfriend was I remember. Yeah, she used to actually watch more porn than me. She used to always go and watch my porn collection.
What's her number?
You know her, actually.
Do I?
But yeah, and so if that's the case, then what? She's a self-hater. What's that about?
Porn isn't just about women, and I think we need to get away from that fact. It's about men too. And yeah, ask the women those questions.
Although women, I think women, when you talk about sex, men think of women. I think when you talk about sex or sexy, I think women also think of women. If you open a Cosmopolitan magazine and you want to see a sexy picture, it's all women. It's full of half-clothed women. Women's magazines are.
That's because women
sex
are attractive.
is all about women. A naked man is not attractive. I don't think naked man is even attractive to a woman.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. You know, I don't think women really want to see a very naked man on you know, they'd rather see Kate Moss, wouldn't they?
Yeah, I think
or Beyonce and say, oh, I'd like to have her off.
And so would I. So, you know, what's up in common?
So we're all in agreement.
The real reason for women's problem with porn, and by extension our feminist society's problem with porn, is that it lessens men's addiction to the women around them. Anything that reduces men's direct dependence on women for sexual or emotional release is a bad thing for female power.
Virtually all men like pornography, so it's easy to see, if it's attacked as a bad thing, it has the power to make all men feel bad about themselves.
This is why pornography is regularly attacked, and often linked to crimes against women, even though no such link exists. The vast majority of films are about the search for the girl, fighting for the girl, risking life and limb for the girl, finding the girl, proving himself to the girl, killing as many men as possible to save the girl.
I will find you. No matter how long it takes, no matter how far. I will find you.
TV series are clothed in feminine themes, typically with women ditching useless men or abandoning marriage for true love, and don't even pretend to present storylines and characters that would interest men.
Let you eat the last piece of cheesecake. Hold a radio over my head outside your window. Unfortunate way that makes me hate you, love you. So pick me. Choose me. Love me.
Men are not allowed to do anything without women involved. Gone are the days when it's okay to have a film or series strictly starring men. The closest I've seen to a male-only cast is Entourage, and yet this is regularly misandrous, almost as if to make up for no female star.
in a shitty little apartment with 5 brothers and sisters and a psychotically drunk father.
We used to say about Pops, no child support, no calves.
You know how many times he gave my mother money when my father wouldn't? My father filed bankruptcy, left my mother with nothing, not even child support.
When ITV launched ITV4, this was supposed to be a solitary channel for men amongst a sea of channels aimed at women. But it's no more good for men than is supplying cocaine to an addict. Whilst you'll find plenty of good-looking women and sports on ITV4, you'll never see a show to genuinely support men.
Advice 2 for women suffering from mental or physical abuse. That's coming up after 9 o'clock.
ITV4 and other channels aimed at men succeed only in continuing the unending campaign to further addict men to women. This is unhealthy for men, because to invest our mental and emotional health in women is like investing our physical health in a vampire. Only very rarely in film will you ever see a strong man, a truly strong man, not enslaved to the beauty and honour of women.
God, aren't you even going to kiss her goodbye?
No.
When I came to live in this house, I promised myself that no woman should ever enter it. So far, none ever has. You're the first.
Okay, Johnny, I'm coming to get you.
Hurry, bro.
I gotta go.
Red, you go. Where shall I go? What shall I do?
Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
Well, what is happening at the moment is that men are beginning to empower themselves by communicating with each other and discussing issues that concern them as men, as opposed to issues that concern them in other spheres of their lives. Men in the past have tended to discuss issues which do not relate to themselves in terms of themselves as men. They will talk about the economy, they'll talk about the war on drugs, the war in Iraq, they'll talk about everything under the sun except themselves. But what is happening, thanks to the internet and to the growth of the men's movement, is that for the first time, probably in history, certainly in recent history, men are actually talking about their own needs. What we are accustomed to in the Western world is women looking at issues, at all issues which affect them as women, rather than as individuals or as people. Men have failed to do this. And so, for example, if you look at the newspapers, if you look at the way matters are discussed, you will very often find women journalists, women authors, writing about subjects, about issues that concern them as women. You never hear, you never see men writing about those issues in the same way. But that's now beginning to change. The second reason is that so many men have now become alienated from their own societies for one reason or another, often because, well, perhaps they've lost access to their children, perhaps they've been sent to prison for some trivial offence like smoking cannabis, perhaps they feel alienated because they've been discriminated against in the workplace, where women have been promoted ahead of them simply on the basis of their gender. They've been demonised for 30 years, and it's still the case that, for example, when men are hurt in any way, their suffering isn't taken seriously. And so we will still laugh at Bobbit jokes, which I think shows us just how hated at a very deep level are men. And there's no doubt in my mind that feminism has had a great deal to do with it. And when men wake up to how they have been demonised by the feminist movement, and they understand how this has been achieved, they will fight back. And that's what's happening now.
Do you think that something in the nature of men makes it more difficult for us to work together, for men to work together to achieve, not in terms of general teamwork, but in terms of forming societies like mankind or contributing to this sort of effort?
Yeah,
do you think that something about men makes it more difficult for that to happen than with women and their charities, who seem to be so numerous?
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with that. I find it quite strange with men. If you get them into what I call a military situation where they've got to take orders and all that, I mean, they're unbeatable. because they do work as a like band of brothers, you know what I mean? They'll all look after each other's back and they will fight as a good team. But it would seem that when it's fighting for women's rights, as when I was down the visitor centre, when I ran that for the first year, and I had this couple came in, and I don't know, she was giving him a bit of a nagging, and this bloke turned around and he says, there's no doubt about it, he said, you ever go at a bloke, he said, he's on his own, he said, you ever go at a woman, he said, and she's got the world behind her.
Why do you think men don't see themselves, or haven't up until recently seen themselves as men? They'll see themselves as Muslims or as a part of a religious group or a colour or a race, but never as men themselves.
Because they're not allowed to talk about it. They are in private, but as you probably, I mean, men in private rarely talk about their emotional states, you know, they're monosyllabic when they talk about their intimate relationships. But, once again, men have not been allowed to air their views, their complaints, their worries in the mainstream media for a long time. And so they haven't developed a consciousness of themselves as men. You know, women see the way, look at the world in a completely different way than do men. Men externalise the world, if you like. They almost don't see themselves as a part of it. They see the world in terms of statistics, numbers. They see the world in terms of different groupings, blacks, whites. But they don't see themselves as men. They're conscious. They don't have a consciousness of themselves as men. You can see this, for example, well, there are many examples, but one that comes to mind is the fact that they don't look after their health very well. Men tend not to go to the doctors as often as do women because men are not thinking of themselves. It's something that they're unaccustomed to thinking about. Men have been brought up, at least certainly when I was a lad, brought up to think of just about everything except themselves. And of course, you need men to think in this way if you're going to send them out to do hard, onerous jobs, if you're going to send them out to war. And a man who goes out to war values his country more than his life. And that's how men have been brought up. And women also do very well in making men forget that they are also human beings.
Fathers' movements right the way across the world have never managed to establish themselves as a coherent, powerful source of opposition. Unlike the feminist movement, women are far better than men in networking and organising and working with each other, particularly over emotional issues. Men, I'm afraid, in the dark ages when it comes to this.
So even if they know that a woman is not really quite right in what she's saying, they'll back her because she's a woman. And the sisterhood's got to stick together.
Do you think that there were things that men could have done back then, or?
Yes, Families Need Fathers started almost immediately after I opened. And in fact, it was because of Families Need Fathers and men coming to me who were brutalised that I opened a house for men in North London. I think this is very relevant to what we're talking about because I got the GLC in those days to give me a lovely big house in North London to make provision for men coming in with their children. And I couldn't get any funding from anyone. And the tragedy was that the men, the wealthy men who were willing to put their hands in their pockets to help me with my mothers and children and my refuge in Chiswick, completely ignored and would not cooperate anything to do with men. Men will not help other men.
Do you have any idea why that is? Is there any easy answer?
I think it's built into the male psyche. Somehow, what is seen or perceived as a weak man, in quotes, who can't take care of himself or take care of his relationship, is a disgrace, and it's almost like it might be catching. When you're dealing with women's violence, whether it be a mob violent rule, like these women, there is an innate part of men that is extremely frightened of women, and they don't deal with them, they run away. Often I've said to a man, the reason that you're so angry with your partner is because you're so dependent on her. And this is often why I think men don't take responsibility for anything to do with this movement. They don't get together, they don't negotiate with lawyers, they don't en masse say, we're not putting up with this.
Do you see that changing at all, or do you think it's just a constant?
I think men have to learn to change. I think women are infinitely malleable and changeable. Maybe it's a biological imperative in women because they create the conditions to have their children safely and to bring them up. But there seems to be, if you put, an example is, when I opened the refuge, it was a 2 up, 2 down outside lavatory, and within a matter of months there were 56 mothers and children in that tiny place. And to watch them organise it, the feeding, the cooking, the washing, the cleaning, they did it all. I just used to come in and be there. The night I opened the men's house, which was actually a much nicer house in North London, and took in the first men, what the men did, which was so dispiriting, because I was expecting them to do what the women did. They just merely moved themselves into different rooms, shut the doors and refused to come out. They didn't cooperate with each other, they didn't help each other. The only thing they were willing to do was to pick up the phone if it rang so they could give advice.
When it comes to men's groups, unless we was able to form them into a new model army, I think it's very difficult, because a lot of them seem to want to do their own thing and work as individuals rather than work as a team. And until men start to work as a team, we're not going to get anywhere. We've got to work as teams.
First of all, we've got to start to talk to men about taking responsibility for the future of their lives in relationships. It can get down to some very simple things with men. I mean, how many men in a relationship take any responsibility for buying Christmas cards? None. They let their wives do it, or their partners do it. Buying presents, they let their wives and their partners do it. Any responsibility for relationships. And I remember giving an impassioned speech somewhere in the world, and I was talking about what I call women as terrorists, because women in relationships tend to behave like terrorists. A lot of the violence is subterranean. And I walked out afterwards, and I'd said impassionately to the men who were there, why is it that you let this happen? I remember this man coming up to me and he said, you'll never understand the nookie principle. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, if I go home and even discuss with my wife that men could be victims, I don't get any sex for weeks. There's a lot to do with that, and it's the intimidation of men. I mean, what is it about men who are supposed to be so much more violent than women, that when it comes to revolutions, in terms of protecting themselves and their children, they're wimps?
My belief is that what is missing from our lives, what is missing from is intimacy. I think that is, we have, what the government has done, what feminists have done, what the child abuse industry has done, what these organisms, if you like, have done, is they have made it very difficult for people to interact closely with each other without risking some form of severe punishment. If they get married, there's a good chance they're going to get divorced, they're going to get, if they deal with children, there's a good chance they're going to be had up for something, blah, blah. And I think the government has purposely made it very difficult for people to have intimate relationships without them risking serious problems. And the consequence is that we're splitting up, we're not getting married, we're not living with each other, and more people living alone, etc., etc., etc. And I think this is purposeful. I actually think that this is of benefit to government. Governments benefit when there's disharmony. The more disharmony, the more badness that there is out there, the more that they can justify, the more the population are fearful, the more they want the governments to protect them, the more funding they give to the government. So the more crime and criminality out there, the worse it is for us, but the better it is for those in power. They benefit from crime. The police benefit from crime. It's wonderful. The more crime, the better. The more jobs they have, the more money, the more funding they get, the bigger do they grow. The bigger do their departments grow. The higher up the ladder they grow, the more important do they become. So they stir it up. They want a war on drugs. They want domestic violence. They love domestic violence. It gives them something to do. But it doesn't. It's of no benefit for the rest of us. And so, intimacy is being destroyed by the nosy Parkers in government, by the feminist view of what relationship, the ridiculous notions that feminists have about relationships are being imposed on the rest of us. And what is forgotten is all of this, is that children need to be hugged, they need to be kissed, they need to be loved, even sometimes by their teachers, especially if they've fallen over, hurt themselves, they're upset, what have you.
So men have become frightened of touching kids. Male teachers are not going into primary schools. Edicts are coming out from councils telling teachers not to touch children, between the shoulders and the knees, not to let them sit on your lap if you're reading them a story. And this is, although it says it's aimed at men and women, it's aimed at men.
Dude, they're on every channel. Everybody is doing something on sex offenders, you know? It's like, dude, I got it. There's people out there touching kids, you know? But it's not everybody. It's a very small portion of the population, so, you know, take it down a few, because you're making it awkward out there. Dude, you can't say hi to kids anymore. I love kids. I love kids. I like making faces at them on the airplane, making them laugh. Now parents are like, is that sex offender? They start huddling their kids in, making me feel like a freak, you know? I'm terrified of kids now. Remember back in the day when a kid would come walking up to you, you could pat him on the head. Hey there, Rusty, how you doing, right? Now a kid comes walking up and I'm like, dude, get that thing the away from me. Get it away from me. I'm serious, dude, get it away from me. Hands are up high, not aroused, just terrified. Please, for the love of God, I'm serious. Get that thing away from me, all right?
You're a psychologist. Harlow's monkeys. Monkeys that are brought up without touch and affection grow up delinquently. They can't bring up their own children. They often kill their own children. There clearly is, there are important reasons why human beings, adults and children, need to be touched. And we know that it affects us. We know how powerful is touch as adults. It makes the world of difference. The children have got to be denied this to a very large extent in their lifestyles from those who are important adults around them.
The point is, you can talk to a 5-year-old all day about how to hold his foot to do something, or you can just grab the foot and do that, and he's learned it from then on. And I just do that now.
Yes.
And before I wouldn't.
Yeah.
But I resented the fact that I felt I couldn't do it.
Yeah. If you're a woman, you've had no problem.
Precisely. It's outrageous. So I do it now, and no one's, I dare anyone to say I'm doing anything wrong.
Well, I think what you're doing there is what you've described there, on the face of it, seems extremely trivial. But in reality, has a big impact, not only for the way in which you teach and the effectiveness of your teaching, but with regard to how the child feels about you. Because a woman can do that, and so from the child's point, oh yes, women are warm and cuddly, but he doesn't. He's cold, he's distant, he's nasty. And that's how he grows up to see you. And you have to behave in this way. Why? Because of the feminists and because of the hysterics in the child abuse industry. These people have, in my view, caused enormous damage. These people, in my view, have caused enormous damage. And I have said on my website, I'll say it again, I'm sure you won't put this out, but I think the National Society for Prevention of Cruelty to Children has done more harm to our children than all the paedophiles in this country put together. I believe it. I think I can justify it. I think I can prove it to the extent that anything can be proved. And I really am very angry that we have this parasitic organisation in our midst, taking our money, by and large, to demonise men and fathers in the eyes of everybody.
The same brush has been used to paint all men, watch out for men. It's a bad message for men, it's a bad message for kids, and it's an untrue message, and it's statistically not sound.
Problems with children today is because adults have distanced themselves to such an extent and are too scared anyway to get too close to them. The children aren't being fed the right information. They're having to discover it for themselves. There's no one to be close enough to lead them through the emotional situations, to guide them closely. And they're seen as they're kind of objects. They're distant from a man's point of view. Children are kind of distant objects unless they happen to have their own. And so in a sense, we're no nearer than we were in the Victorian era, if you see what I mean. You see children around you in the street, maybe getting up to mischief, maybe playing truant. Nobody says anything. Jimmy Bulger, wasn't he? He was walked out of the middle of the shopping centre, and so you had little Jimmy Bulger, the two boys who eventually killed him, walking around the street during school hours. Nobody says anything.
But well-disciplined children don't become criminals, don't become vulnerable to abuse, and don't need government intervention. This is bad news for a long list of agencies. The discipline provided by men doesn't just apply to his own children. The positive influence of men extends to all children they come across, but this influence has been ceaselessly eroded, such that now, men are considered suspect for showing any interest whatsoever in children and their welfare.
You got a light?
You gotta be kidding me. Turtle, look at this kid.
Jesus Christ, what are you, 13? And you getting high?
You're not gonna give us a lecture, are you?
No, not a lecture, a life lesson.
We're primed by the negative activities of the NSPCC and the government to actually expect aberrant behaviour from men around children, and so any accusation is readily believed. In self-defence, men are forced to distance themselves from children for fear of what they may be accused of.
Just put the joint down, kid.
Just give me a light, old man, or I'll tell my dad you put your hand on my knee.
The alienation of men from children. For men to feel safe around children, the best thing that they can do is to be cold and distant. And that's exactly what they've become. Men have become cold and distant to a large extent. So, for example, teachers, male teachers won't go near the children. They'll be rigid. And so children grow up thinking, God, men are cold and distant. And they are. They have to be, for their own protection. And I, as a male, resent that very deeply, and I think a lot of men do as well. And they're angered by it. And a lot of boys have missed out as a result of that, boys in particular. I mean, it's a double whammy for them, because if they haven't got the male role model, and they haven't got the affection, they're missing a lot. Hence all the delinquency. Hence almost the psychopathy in our society.
The government and charities want themselves to be the only agencies involved in child protection, instead of the most appropriate and the most effective child protector on the planet, men. Perversely, by removing men from protecting children, they create much larger numbers of children in need of protection. This should be ironic, but it's actually great for business.
What we have is a situation where we are governed by organisms, government, feminists, the abusive, whose sole interest is stirring up as much hatred as they possibly can. And we see this all the time in their rhetoric, constantly trying to cast suspicion on those who have intimate relations with each other. Is the man sexually assaulting the child? Is he being domestically violent towards his wife? Is he raping the woman that he's dating? It's all negative. That's a major problem, which the men's movement will obliterate. It will.